I'll be starting the actual illustration shortly, just setting up a couple things, and then I'll be with you. Just one more minute and I'll be there. I guess there's only one person here, so anyway, I'll still do what I do. I guess I know who that one person is. And I'm also glad to have that. Oh, there we go. But I'm also glad to have that one person. Most important person there is. As I said, tonight I'm going to be doing some illustrations based on my own iNaturalist observations. So you get 2 in 1. You get some nature and you get some Inkscape as well. I'm going to close all this because I don't need all those. Well, I set layers. And I'm going to put this in a corner over here. If my computer will cooperate. It doesn't want to. I don't know why my computer won't cooperate. That's amazing. All of a sudden it has stage fright. Oh well, we'll do this the old-fashioned way. Right, there we go. Hello. By the way, if you're there other than my favorite person, you can say hello so I know you're there and I know who it is that's watching. Always nice to know who it is. Now, I don't want to mispronounce this, so I'm going to just say Eric because I have no clue if you say J or something else. But hi Eric. I wonder what I should go with this time because I've already done. What have I done actually? These are not all of my observations. Some of these are kind of old. I'm looking for something pretty new. Oh, I am. I'm doing very well, actually. Today was a pretty good day. I got some new stuff. Feeling like $1,000,000. Ready to do some pretty big things. So, yeah. I'm doing pretty good. Well, this looks like a good one. Let me see what I can do with this. Now I'm going to start, usually I start with the eyes, so that's what I'm going to start with here. That usually gives me a good focal point for the rest of the illustration. If I'm doing something like a dog or a cat or anything like that, I'll usually do something like the mouth or anywhere else toward the front of the face, because that is just how my brain works. You don't have to do that. In this case, so I'm starting with the eyes and the front of the face, which is pointing downward. And you'll notice that at different points I'll skip from here and jump to something else. And it's not that I'm disjointed, it's just that this is the best way for me to gather spatial information, all that stuff, and then I can work from there. Oops, let me turn this off. Just a second. Alright, there we go. Back to work. This one provides a bit of a challenge because, as you can see, this section here is actually kind of bulkier than the rest of it up here because the legs are attached there. Then it goes a little thinner there and then widens again very slightly, so I have to keep all that in mind. I'm gonna try not to miss it. Now thanks to this graphics tablet that I got this week, which was a big blessing, and thanks to my girlfriend for that, I was able to finally get pressure information in Inkscape, which is very helpful. As you can see, I'm touching very lightly, and that allows me to kind of sketch where I want to put everything else without finalizing anything. I can later delete these lines if I want, but I'm not going to. I usually keep them because I think these sketch lines give you a good guideline for the rest of what you're doing. I can't remember, by the way, if this is a male or a female. Somebody on iNaturalist was able to determine that, and I don't know how they know it, but just goes to show you there's always somebody who knows more than you, because I just saw this and thought, whoa, look at praying mantis. These are a little too long, but oh well. I'll just lengthen this part here a little. Now, if I had better lighting in this photo, I'll be able to actually get the grooves of the wings, or the venation I should say, use more accurate terminology so I don't sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. But the veins on the wings are very distinctive on most insects, and so if I had better lighting I would try to actually replicate those. In this case I can't really see them, so I'm just going to pretend that this praying mantis doesn't have any, and I'm more going to focus on shading. As you can see, this section here has a little bit of a darker shade because the body is visible through the wings, so I'm going to try to give it some very light shading on here. I really love the pressure information that you get with this, because having different levels of pressure is just like drawing on paper. But even better in my opinion, because on paper sometimes you have less control. I'm not going to do too much on this because you can't really see too much detail other than at the back, and quite frankly illustrating it is not as easy as taking a photograph, obviously. But just so the wings are a little more distinct, I'm going to make the edges heavier, especially in certain critical areas. When you're doing edges like this, it really pays to move slowly, do very short strokes, because if you try to move too quickly, your hands have a tendency to curve things. Now, I should explain something even though you wouldn't see it here, but if I put Inkscape in full view, see this setting here that says mask? If I turn this up, it will draw very differently, and I only learned that last night because it was really annoying me. So let me show you what happens if you do it. If you do that, see it's lagging behind. That's really useful if you're trying to do hair or if you're trying to do any kind of fibrous material, but it's not very useful when you're trying to draw, because what that does is that if you're trying to draw a shape like that, see, it lags behind, and so you can't actually always tell what you're drawing. So anytime you're drawing in Inkscape and you really want to get good detail, make sure mask is turned off. Alright, back to drawing. I'm kind of fearful of doing these legs because they're so detailed, even though they're so simple. Simple things in life sometimes are the hardest things to do, and sometimes that's why I never actually get around to doing them. I think that could probably be said for all of us. I want to taper the ends of these wings a little bit more, so I'm going to just add some more shading up here. Put some lines on it. I think I'm going to leave that alone and just finish up here. Now, another strategy that you can use is to use a lighter color if you're trying to get thinner strokes. They're not actually thinner, but your brain is tricked into thinking that they are. So I'm going to use a lighter gray to do these details over here. As you'll notice, as I keep drawing over them, they get slightly darker. Not too dark, because obviously it's a lighter color, but it still can look thinner if you don't use it too much. That allows me to get some of the thinner details that I want, and then I can go back over them with a darker color when I'm finished. Now I'm going to try to attempt these legs here. Okay, that angle is incorrect, so let me take that back out. Need to bring it a little bit closer to the body, like this. Right, there we go. And then I'm going to come out to a side. Now you'll notice with insects, usually there are joints that are pretty visible, unlike our joints, because our skin is on the outside as opposed to our skeleton. Their skeleton is on the outside as opposed to their skin, so you can actually see the joints. Believe it or not, that's a somewhat better system than what we have at a smaller scale. That's why insects are proportionally much stronger than we are, but if you get much bigger, it reverses up to a certain extent. After you get to a certain level, then the whole system falls apart because too much weight and the body can't support itself. That's why there are no super giant animals on the planet, at least not anymore. There were some dinosaurs that got pretty big, but even they had to have some engineering feats to make that possible. That's also why there are no, other than the atmospheric problems, there are no super giant spiders. Although I have my doubts about whether or not reports out of certain parts of the world are true. You never know. Right, I give that a little bit too much detail there, because that leg is actually thin all the way through, so let me take that back out. Right, there we go. By the way, another detail about praying mantises that really fascinates me is the fact that they actually use their raptorial legs to walk, which is something that other insects that use similar methods or similar lifestyles, I should say, like for catching prey and have similar front legs, can't do. And that's one of the ways we can tell praying mantises apart from mantis flies and mantispids. I shouldn't actually be giving this claws, but I kind of feel like it, so I'm cheating a bit with this. I don't think... Then again, there probably are claws, but you probably can't see them in this photo. So I'm kind of cheating there. Alright, I don't really think I did this end piece correctly, so I'm going to take that out. But I still am going to cheat and give it claws, because if I had better magnification, you'd see them. Now, fun fact about me, I actually used to draw very differently when I was younger. See all this sketching that I'm doing, taking my time and going through details like this. I wouldn't do that. I would just draw straight lines, draw the shape that I want, and that would be it. And then I would go back over and add detail if I needed it. But I've come to learn that there is quite a bit of value in taking your time and sketching. Even if it looks a little rough around the edges, it actually has its purpose. Because you actually get to appreciate every detail and you're forced to pay more attention to what you're doing. Although there is also something to just going straight ahead and doing it one time, you know, just drawing the shape and leaving it there. There is some degree of value to that as well. But you oftentimes miss some things along the way as you do that. So I've had to learn as I grow. I could have done this head a little bit better, but hey. First time ever drawing a praying mantis, so I can give myself some slack, I guess. By the way, is this anyone's first time watching me? Because I don't really know who is on other than two people, one of whom I don't remember seeing before. So is this anyone's first time watching me? Awesome. Well, welcome. And you're actually getting to experience me using a headset for the first time. So this is also the first stream where I'm talking so much. You'll actually get to find out that I talk quite a bit in real life when people are around, which is not that often because I'm always away from people. Well, that's cool. That means I'm actually reaching some people. Oh wait, I got this angle wrong. I'm cheating again with this detail because these antennae are not that thick. But otherwise it'd be kind of hard to draw them, so I'm just going to cheat and make them thick. I guess the mantis won't mind because it's probably dead by now. Oh, that's cool. Never expected to be retweeted by an Inkscape developer, but here we are. That makes me feel pretty good. That's also a reminder, by the way, never to listen to your own imposter syndrome, because I had imposter syndrome, still do, and I often feel like I just suck at everything, so never listen. When imposter syndrome is speaking, just tell imposter syndrome to be quiet. Here's a tricky thing. This leg actually goes out to the side a little bit, leaves a little bit of space, comes underneath this eye, and then comes out the other side at the front and sticks together with the other one. That is one weird detail. I find it quite amazing actually just how many people struggle with feeling like they're not actually good at what they're good at. I know it keeps us humble, but at the same time it can be very damaging, so I like to remind people you are actually as good as you think. You just have to believe it. Actually, something I've learned from both reading and experience is that if you don't believe in yourself, you can't actually accomplish anything that you're capable of fully, because you begin to believe that you're not that good, and therefore you don't produce what you can actually do. So if you want to produce better stuff, big yourself up a little bit and actually believe that you are as good as you say you are. Or as you think you're not, I should say. Trust me, there's nothing actually corny. We're just conditioned as adults to think that certain things are not all that cool because we have a very self-deprecating culture in this world. But even the things that we consider corny are very useful. Like dad jokes, for instance. What's wrong with being a dad? They're just jokes. They're funny. Laugh at them. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, have you ever wondered why praying mantises pray? Is it because that they're praying over their food to thank God for it? Or they're praying that they actually catch something because they suck? Now that I asked that question, that's actually a very deep and existential question because most predators are very terrible at catching food, so their rate of success tends to be like below 60%, 30%, that kind of stuff. Really makes you wonder how they survive. Probably also keeps them up at night because to live they have to kill. Which also makes me wonder, do praying mantises sleep? I've never actually found that out. I know this one did because it stayed over my bed for like 3 days and didn't move. Probably had a long vacation or maybe it was working a long time and it needed to get a long rest. I'm not sure. Another thing I wonder is, do animals wonder about us like we wonder about them? Sorry for all the deep questions, I'm just thinking out loud. The way the world is, I should actually get an award for thinking at all, but it is what it is. I think they do. I think animals do think about us and wonder about us, especially cats, because cats are just on a whole other level. Dogs, on the other hand, probably just think we're boring at times because we won't play. Cats probably think we're weird because we don't understand quantum physics. Actually, the only reason why cats haven't gone to Mars yet is because there's nothing to knock on the floor, so they're not gonna waste their time. I got these proportions a little wrong, but it's my first time drawing a praying mantis, as I said, so I'm going to remind myself to cut myself some slack. I'm also going to use a butter knife to do that because I don't want to cut myself too much slack. See, that's the thing, you have to strike a balance between fighting imposter syndrome and recognizing your own shortcomings so that you can improve. If you can strike that balance, you can win. Actually, I have a saying, the true meaning of humility is recognizing who you really are. So to either believe that you're not good enough or to believe that you're too much is prideful. But if you can recognize who you really are, both your strengths and your flaws, you're a humble person. Alright. Not quite perfect, but not too bad. Now what I'm going to do here is add some detail on a layer below. Let me get a lighter color actually. Now when I'm doing these, I actually turn my hand to a side because it's much harder to draw with my hand in the right position when I'm doing this. Is anything actually being drawn on the screen though, because I can't see it? Oh yeah, it is. Okay. I have it too thin. Oops, didn't mean to rotate. I keep forgetting I don't need to hold any buttons to move this thing, just to zoom in. Alright, there we go. Now I can see what I'm doing. Now don't worry that these lines seem to be crossing over because there's nothing underneath to hide them. I'm going to hide them after by using standard polygons and blurring them. I just kind of want to get a textured effect beneath this praying mantis. I should have made the body a lot longer than this, by the way. That's one of the things about drawing animals and other stuff based on a picture as opposed to your imagination. Proportions are hard. Because you start drawing in one set of proportions, then your mind sees another, and then another, and then another, and so on and so forth. So you have to sometimes stop what you're doing, zoom out, take a look at the big picture, and try again. Or sometimes you just wing it, get it wrong, recognize your failures, and decide next time I'll do better. Sometimes the trick isn't to stop before you fail, it's to allow yourself to fail and then learn from your failure, so that next time you do it, you can do a better job. And that doesn't work for everything, obviously. That's a life principle for certain things. Things where you know that if you fail, there's no harm in it. But if there is harm in it, then just stop. Not going to make any sense to continue. But when it comes to stuff like drawing, it's just like walking. Walking is a series of controlled falls. So if you actually want to learn to walk, you have to allow yourself to fall a bit. If you're not willing to do that, well, then you're never going to walk. Now, in case you're wondering, yes, I am aware that the curtain behind this praying mantis looks nothing like what I'm doing. I'm using strategy, so watch and learn what I'm doing. I'm not going to explain it, I'm just going to demonstrate it, and you can watch and see how this works. This is one of the things about using digital tools that I much prefer over drawing on paper, is that you can actually layer things and blend things in a way that you can't do on regular paper with a regular pencil. Not that you can't do anything with a regular paper and pencil, but it's much harder than this. And I commend anyone who can actually achieve the effects that you can achieve digitally using paper and pencil. Because I've been using paper and pencil for years and years. Did take a break for a few years, but I never got as good as some people I've seen, and I absolutely marvel at that. I don't know how they do that. By the way, although this is not one of my teaching streams, which I'll eventually get to, I am going to give you a little bit of insight that I find works in both life and art. Art is basically learning how to stack simplicity, because what I'm doing here is what a child does when they're scribbling. And yet, as you can see, it's building texture. And then when I'm done building all this texture, I'm going to spill all over it and turn it into something a little more similar to what you can see on the right side of the screen. And all that is just stacking simplicity. You're not trying to make things complicated, keep it simple, stack on top of it, and there you go. Alright, let me actually move this layer up, and I'm going to put this over it. Okay, all that texture I just did is invisible, but I'm going to use one of the layer effects to get it to, there we go, to look like I want it to. And if I turn the opacity down, you see it, and no you don't. And I can blur this a little bit so that the edges fade out as well. I like to use decimal places when I do anything like blurring or opacity, but it's not necessary. You can use whatever you want, whether it's flat numbers or not. It doesn't really matter, but that's just my style. I'll explain that in future streams when I actually get around to teaching it, but you know. Alright, this layer now I will duplicate and blur. Let me see what screen does. Okay, screen. Yeah, there we go. There we go, just like I want it. Now if you zoom in, of course, it's going to be a little less spectacular. But if you zoom out, it gives you a nice effect, similar to what you see over here. Not perfect, obviously, because these are really hard to do. That pattern is really hard to replicate unless you were to go and do it by hand, or if you were to use the pattern tool in Inkscape, which we're not doing because we're drawing. Oh, thanks, babe. It is a nice effect indeed. I really like it. So, if you wanted to replicate this, you could like create a shape and then replicate it using the pattern tool, but I don't recommend doing that because it's not as realistic, doesn't look as good. And especially if you're drawing by hand, you want everything you're seeing to have a hand-drawn look, as opposed to blending a hand-drawn look with a more or less computer-generated look. So I didn't do that, but you can. Just letting you know it's possible. Alright, and this here is the name of that praying mantis that we just drew. Nosonia surinama. Do not ask me to repeat that because I do not speak Latin or Greek, even though I love languages. And I don't know why we have to name things in Latin and Greek when we don't speak them. But that's just my little soapbox, which I will step right back off of immediately. So what should I draw next? Let's see. This little guy here would be cool, but very hard to draw. It's actually a lightning bug slash firefly, which is what we call them here. And these actually eat snails and other invertebrates when they're at this stage. Then when they become adults, they don't really have fully functional mouth parts, so they only drink liquids like sugary substances. Oh, this is a challenge. Wonder if I can actually pull this off. A frog. I've never really been good at drawing frogs, so I'll probably try this one. I like to challenge myself and push myself to new limits because it helps me to develop new skills. So let's go for a frog next. And this is the lesser Antillean whistling frog. If you've ever been to Barbados, you would know you hear these every single night. And they don't stop chirping till like probably very early in the morning, just before the sun comes up. But the funny thing is, if you live here for any length of time, you can't sleep without hearing them. It's weird, because whenever I go to parts of the island where there are no whistling frogs, it feels creepy. I can't explain it, but it just is what it is. But other people who are not from Barbados, whenever they hear them, they're like, do you hear that? I'm just saying, well, we hear it every night, so no big deal. You know, that's normal. Other people are saying, yeah, that's a bit much. I don't know what their problem is, but I think they're pretty cool. So I'm going to try to draw this guy here. He was actually calling for a female on this plant, and then when I put the light on him, he went silent, which is what they always do. They don't like to be seen, or, well, I don't know if they don't like to be heard. They do like to be heard, but they don't like to be seen by humans. So once you get a light on them or they see you, they go silent. I'm going to turn off layers right now because I need some space. Oh, Inkscape doesn't want to get any smaller. That's not cool. Oh well, I'll try to work with what I can see. Now, as I said, I usually like to start with the eyes. Gives me some good perspective. Oops, wrong color. Gonna turn that up a bit. Now, one of the reasons that I like to start with the eyes is, as I said, it gives you a nice focal point to start from, but it also helps you with perspective, because you have to get the angles just right if you want to get them, you know, to fit with the rest of the image. Okay. And I usually go with the top ridge of any eye of any animal with eyes that I'm drawing. If I'm drawing a worm, obviously, and it doesn't have eyes, then, well, I'll just draw the worm. But if I'm drawing any kind of animal with eyes, I usually go from the top and come down. If I'm drawing like a wasp or anything even, I'll still start from the top and come down, because it helps you to figure out where the rest of the animal will go. Now, one of the things that you have to figure out with art is that, or with, I should say, with trying to replicate anything from real life, is that you have to match basically a bunch of lines to positions. So I'm going to try to match this angle here with a line that corresponds to it. Like right up here by his mouth, as it goes up, curves up, and then kind of goes up a little, well, not really straight, but slightly slanted from a 90 degree angle. So I'm going to try to replicate that. One of the mistakes I used to make was that I used to try to draw what my mind was trying to see, or say, I should say, because art is basically like your brain talking to the paper. So I used to try to draw what my mind was trying to say, as opposed to just matching lines, which is really what you're doing. It's mathematical, it's geometry, it's all those things, but I won't get into all that. That's not my field. I'm not a mathematician. I don't try to figure it out, but I do know how to put lines on paper. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm coming down to where his back leg would be, because I need to figure out some proportions. So I'm just going to put some lines here to represent that, because that helps me to figure out where I have to follow from when I come from up here. There's a slight curvature around this region. Some other slight curvature upward around here. And then it comes back into this. I say this almost every stream, but this is why designers charge so much money for what we do, because it's a lot of work trying to design things, whether it's realistic or cartoonish or whatever. It's a lot of work trying to do what we do. And sometimes I think designers are underappreciated, because we tend to associate art with playing. And it really isn't that. I mean, it is playful, but it isn't playing. It's work. And you have to think, and you have to plan, and you have to execute that plan accurately. So that's why designers charge so much. Even web designers, which I'm one to, charge a lot of money, because if you're good at it, it takes you doing a lot of work. If you're just picking up a template and modifying it, maybe you can charge a little less, but even then, if you're actually putting in the work to modify that template, still a lot of work. And something fascinating that I noticed here, you probably can't see it very well, but their pupils are not horizontal. His pupil is actually in the center of his eye, but because there's a dark stripe around it, it looks like it's not actually present, or like if the pupil is that black stripe that stretches straight across his face, But that's not actually true. It's just the way how frogs are designed. So what I'm going to try to do is put a very subtle distinction here to represent his pupil, which is actually visible if you look very carefully. There's a slight raised area right here in the center of his eye. That's where the pupil is. And you can see the slight curvature right in that region. Not very easy to see at that angle, but if you have the eye for detail, you can see it. Just strengthen these lines around here. Now, I am aware that I did make it appear darker than it should be. I can fix that, but I won't in this drawing because I'm allowing myself to fail a little bit so that I can learn from it. The next time I do it, I'll try to do a better job of that. Now, I'm obviously not able to match every single detail on his face, color for color, dot for dot, etc., but I'm going to try to give it some texture. And texture sometimes is nothing more than randomness, because although nature isn't random, it has some organized chaos, and that's what gives everything the life, the vigor, whatever you want to call it, whatever words you want to use poetically to describe it. That's what makes nature stand out, because there's organized chaos. But I should point out there is a big difference between organized chaos and absolute confusion. Now, I'm actually going to use a mistake to my advantage, because I started to draw his arm, well, not arm, his front leg a little too soon. So I'm going to use that as part of his body, and then use this darker shade here to represent the front of his leg. Then I'm going to draw this part here where it comes out a little bit, it bulges slightly before it gets to his toes. And by the way, I'm saying his because I know for sure this was a male. The females don't sing, and he was singing, so that's how I know it was a male. And it's funny, I have a very strange memory. I can remember details of photos I took years before and still manage to forget what I just went to open the fridge for. I don't know how that works. I can also remember telling people things years before that I promised to do and didn't remember 5 minutes later, and then 2 years after I remember, oh yeah, I told that person I was going to make a funny video for them and I didn't. And that is actually something real that I was supposed to do for somebody years ago, and I still haven't. Oh, by the way, shameless plug. Share this stream if you're enjoying it. I forgot to share on Facebook before I went live, and I would love other people to be able to enjoy this. So if you're watching and you like it, share it with a friend, share it with your family, share it with your dog. I'm sure your dog would enjoy watching it as well, if you have a dog. I don't have a dog, but I'm sure your dog will like it. So share it with everybody and let them enjoy it too. I'm doing some of the very latest strokes at this point because I just want to follow the tracing of the leaf before I get to anything else on his body. Sometimes the smallest details, like this toe that's sticking out here, are the hardest because you have to figure out everything and consider everything. Even though it looks simple, you have to think about all the little intricacies that go into it. And something I find very fascinating about living things is how everything kind of blends into everything else. Because, well, at least I should say when it comes to vertebrates and stuff, because insects are different. They have distinct joints, distinct separations, etc. But like this frog, for instance, his legs just appear out of his body. So when you're drawing them, there are certain points where you just stop drawing lines and leave it there. I find that very fascinating. I should have moved this eye or leg a little more, because no, I don't have enough space to put this line there as it should be, and his ear. So I'll learn from this and make sure the next time I do any frogs that I pay a little more attention to the spacing between their face and their leg. Let me see if I can get now some of the finer details of his face. Using very light strokes at this point, just barely touching the tablet because I want to give him detail rather than trying to really draw anything too strong in terms of features, just trying to put some details on it. I don't want him to look hairy, obviously, so I'm kind of trying to blend them into one another as well. Then I'm going to use some harder strokes to give him some dots, some blotches. I may need to change the preset on this as well. See if this works. Oops, that's too big. Oh, I see. Always learning something new. You can't actually change that without changing the preset. So I'll just have to try to work with it other ways. Seems to be working pretty well though. Oh, it did. I think it did change the preset, but clearly there's a bug in the interface because now it says no preset, but the preset has changed. So I'm going to take out some of these because I don't want them so big, I don't want them so dark. So what I'm going to do instead is change the color, change the size, and try again. Now, as I said before, using a lighter gray makes it seem as though I'm drawing thinner. I did change the size, yes, but you'll notice that if I were to make that a little bit darker, these would be a lot more obvious. Because one of the things you're doing in art is tricking the brain. You're not actually doing some of the things that you appear to be doing. You're making the brain think that that's what it is. I'm going to try something here I don't do very often, which is to shade without using actual painting methods, kind of, which is, if I were trying to paint, I would use a much larger brush or a much larger width and preset and just go all at it on another layer. But what I'm going to do is put some very thin lines at the bottom to try to give him the effect that he has here, where it blurs from one color to another. I hope it works. So you're getting to see some experimentation, and I'm just going to see what happens. I don't normally do this, but I want to see how it comes out. I'm going to use some swift lines in here to get that effect using a lighter gray. And again, this is stacking simplicity and using some of the tools that you would have used when you were a child, when you were a toddler and you're just scribbling. So I'm basically just scribbling all over in this area very rapidly and blending them together. And you'll notice as I do that, that the color that I use, even though it's very light, it stacks on top of itself, so it looks like some areas are darker than others. It actually is working. I'm going to use some of that down here. Want to bring it up a little bit more because of how it looks on the rear of his body, or at least the rear of the middle. And I add some more back here. I'm pretty satisfied with that result. Looks much better than I expected. So you see, experimentation is not always a bad thing. Sometimes it has some good results. And I'm going to use a similar effect up here to cover the rest of his body with a darker grey. especially focus on the middle here where he has some darker areas. Now what you can do to remove some of the effect of it looking like straight lines is use some small circles of the same color or even a lighter color on top of it, and as you blend those in, it begins to remove the look of straight lines that you would have had before, because obviously frogs don't have hair, so I don't want him to look like he has hair. I want him to look as though he has that bumpy skin that frogs tend to have, so that's what I'm going to use. Now another trick of the trade is that basically when you use really thin lines like this, your brain can't necessarily always determine the individual lines, so they all kind of get blended together. And that's why it looks like there's more or less a bumpy or mottled surface when you're done. But to make that even more effective, what you can do is add a shape on top of this and then blur it so that it blends into the rest of the background and it looks even more realistic. Which is exactly what I'm going to do now, so I'm going to turn back on layers again, lock this layer, add another layer, and I'm going to add a rectangle, turn that to a path, modify the path a little bit. Let me turn off snapping, I don't need snapping right now. Every one of these points I want them to be auto smooth. And I add some more points to this so that I can move them a little more. I'll move the shape or mold the shape a little more. And once I'm done here, I'm going to blur it. And possibly also use layer effects to, well, the blend mode, sorry, to make it look a little more blended in with the rest of the background. Alright. In fact, I can blur the object or I can blur the layer. I'm going to blur the layer because that's more simple and straightforward at this point. Now don't worry that it doesn't really look like much yet. It's a process. If you want to see how I did something similar with a fictional creature, you can actually go back and watch one of my previous streams where I recreated a bird that I would have invented, if you will, when I was younger. I first drew it as a juvenile and then I decided to draw the adult and put it in color. Looks pretty cool. You can go back and watch that process in my previous streams. And you'll see how stacking simplicity produces some pretty cool results. I'm not done yet because I still want to give it some more randomness. As I told you before, organized chaos is the key to making things look more natural. So I'm going to use some organized chaos to my advantage. One of the other cool features of Inkscape, spray and scatter objects. I'm going to spray some of this around here. The other cool thing is, because I'm using layers, if I'm not satisfied with the effect that I'm getting, I can just remove it. Gonna try difference. Okay, it didn't work like it. Okay, there we go. Exclusion. Right. Now what I'm gonna do here, resize these objects a bit. Just gonna shift some things around. Now again, as I told you, I'm doing some experimentation. Not everything that I do, at least on these current streams, is going to be the definitive way to get this thing and that thing done. It's experimentation oftentimes. But I do know what I'm doing. It's just that I'm using different methods to see how they work. Well, not how they work, but what result I'm going to get, you know, when I'm playing around with practicing an art form that I'm pretty familiar with. When I actually do get around to like more teaching and stuff like that, I won't be wasting as much time experimenting, because I'll just be showing you how to achieve a result. But tonight, I'm just having some fun. Alright, let's duplicate this layer again, move it up. Oh, not darken. Now let me see something here. Is this giving me... It is giving me some darkness on the top of him, but not as good as I want it. These things can take some time to get right. Not a problem for me though. I don't mind experimenting. I actually like experimentation because it's how you learn new techniques. So I'm gonna go back to drawing on top of this now and see if I can add some more texture to him. I think he was good as he was before I went playing around, but still, it isn't actually too bad because I can work with this. Or I need that to be much bigger than that, obviously. Okay, now I'm going to blur this layer a little bit as well. And I'm going to duplicate it. And bring the blurring down a little bit. And the opacity as well. Alright, there we go. Not too bad. Obviously not perfect, but not too shabby for a first time in a long time at least doing any frog, and the first time drawing a lesser Antillean whistling frog from a photograph. I think he looks pretty good. Could be better if I were actually being serious and taking my time to get all the detail right, but hey, I like him. Oh, where did my Mattis go? That is weird. Oh, I didn't realize I turned the Mattis off by accident. Okay, so I'm gonna call it a night for now because it is pretty late, and I don't want to force anything more into this stream, but the next time you can watch me probably drawing some more stuff. I'm probably going to get into something more interesting than drawing my iNaturalist observations, but if you want to send me any suggestions, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook. I don't really do too much on Facebook, but you can send me a message on Twitter, or you can go to my website and send me a message from my contact form and let me know what you would like to see. If you would like to be trained or learn how to do graphic design, you can contact me as well and I can sort something out. But look out for some educational streams and YouTube videos coming in the very near future, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you next time. Oh, and like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I don't think Twitch has a like button, but you can like, share, and subscribe on all my other platforms as well. And I'll see you next time.